across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here as usual on a Wednesday evening. And coming up at midnight, it's the phone in. And it is a full hour of just you and me, your chance to have your say and to talk back. No guests, nothing else, just us. What I want to talk to you about at midnight is it ever right to smack a child? Now, there's a professor here who says smacking children can be good. It can be good for them. Now, this is a professor who makes it clear we're not talking about beating, we're not talking about beating with an object. That's very different. And this is what gets conflated with smacking children, is the violence and everything, and people go too far and all of those things. But that's not what we are talking about. Of course, violence against children, when it's uncontrolled, when it's extreme, is completely wrong. But is a smack on the leg really that damaging for children? And he goes on to say that I think banning the punishment would be a mistake. This is after a group of leading child doctors have called on the UK government to ban smacking in England. Now, it's already banned in Scotland and it's already banned in Wales and 67 other countries, with a further 20 countries committing to do so in the future. They describe, the people who are behind this, describe it as a Victorian era punishment that does not benefit children. However, he's a leading child expert and he disagrees with that. He thinks that it does. It can actually benefit youngsters as they develop. He then throws a lot of shade at this sort of gentle parenting, where you are supposed to just sit and talk about the problems that you're having with a 4-year-old. You're supposed to reason it out with an unreasonable creature. And that's supposed to do the trick. That's supposed to be the way that you parent. And look, there's a lot of people that say there's not enough discipline with children now, and this is why. This is why, because parents are afraid to discipline their children. So did you ever discipline your children with a smack? Again, I'm not talking about beating. There was violence in my childhood, in my family home, from my stepfather. I know the difference between a smack and a beating, right? I grew up with it, so I know the difference. But is it ever right to smack a child? A lot of people believe that teaches children violence. Again, this professor has got some statistics, which I'll let you know a little bit later, that says the opposite of that is true, that children who are smacked do not grow up to be violent themselves. Were you smacked as a child? Did it do you any harm? And we always hear that, oh, it didn't do me any harm, as Kevin was saying a minute ago. But is it a case that smacking did do you some harm? I'd like to hear from you on this, because within I don't know how long it will be banned in this country. And I just think that I sort of agree with this professor. I sort of do. These people who argue you should be able to explain to your child using words why their actions are wrong. They even don't believe in the consequence of a naughty step, these gentle parenting people. They don't believe in consequences for bad behaviour, and I don't know whether that is necessarily a good idea, a good plan. Anyway, listen, that's what we're going to be talking about. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000, and you can text me a message as well. Put the word talk and your message to 87222. So that's coming up at midnight. I'd love to hear your views on that. And then we've got the fabulous John Boothman. Love him. He's going to be going through the newspapers for us for Thursday. Phil Dave is going to be here as well, talking about how lab-grown food could be on UK shelves within 2 years. Would you eat a lab-grown burger? I'm not sure I would choose to. The marvellous Michelle Pillino will also be joining us with some entertainment news from LA. But before that, Greenland. Now, it's been in the news again as the centre-right opposition party has secured a general election victory today. The Democratic Party won nearly 30% of the vote, putting an end to the ruling coalition's majority. But what does this mean? What does this mean for the future of Greenland and the fact that it actually wants to be independent from Denmark? It doesn't want to be part of America. It doesn't want to be part of Denmark. So it wants to be completely independent. It's been part of Denmark, if you like, for over 300 years. Most of the stuff that they deal with is their own. They have their own elections. They set out their own rules. But on big things like the defence of it is taken care of by Denmark. So what does this mean? Because Donald Trump has said, we will have Greenland one way or the other. So let's find out about the unique versions of their elections and why this all matters from Christopher Frendersen, who is a Danish journalist based in Brussels. A good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, thank you very much.
Hi, could you first of all explain the political landscape of Greenland and how this is a significant vote?
It was a major surprise to a lot of people, both in Denmark and also in Greenland. The party itself that won, as you mentioned, Demokratiet, was very surprised that they got such a good election. But it was a major voter backlash for the governing parties. That's the party IA and the party Suimut, who's been governing for the last 4 years or so. It's a social democratic and a socialist party, and usually they have been some of the biggest party historically in at least for the last years in Greenland. So it was a major surprise to see the huge voter backlash that they experienced. I think, as I just remember here, Suimut lost half their voters and IA lost a third of their voters. So that was very significant. And Demokratiet, they gained a lot of votes. It was their voting share was tripled, and at the same time also there was another surprise, which was Nalerak. Sorry, I'm probably butchering the exact pronunciation of this party, but this is a very pro-independence party, and they want to pretty much speed up the process of becoming independent. And they doubled their voting share, so that was also very significant. And the last party, at Satut, they more or less stayed the same. They gained a few votes, but it was nothing major. That party is the only one that doesn't want independence from Denmark. They want to renegotiate the Self-Government Act, which has been in place for the last 10 years or so. They want to renegotiate that, but they don't want independence per se. But they didn't gain a lot of votes, only a few.
What does this tell us? And is this a Trump effect? Is this because of Donald Trump saying we're going to have Greenland one way or the other?
No, not really. Of course, Trump played a part in this election. His blatant remarks, of course, was noticed very much in Greenland, and they reacted to that. But for many years, Greenland has wanted some sort of independence from Denmark specifically. When I covered this story, I spoke with a few experts who said like what Greenland really wants is just to be recognized as a population of an independent country, just like any other country that we would think of. They have not been that. They are part of the, you could say, Danish kingdom, and they have been that, as you mentioned in your introduction, for many years. But now they want to be, and for many years they want to be independent. Of course, the remarks by Trump has played a part that independence became even more, the thought of independence became even more present for them. There has also been some you could say, some interesting stories or things happening in Denmark that also pushed the discussion of independence. There was a documentary made by the public service broadcaster. It was called Greenland's White Gold, which was published a few weeks before the election, and then it was pulled back. It was retracted, rather. And the reason for that was that it was very misleading. That also played a part in the debate around independence. So Trump played a part, but also Danish news stories also and documentaries also played a part.
Could it be that because Trump is determined to have Greenland, that the people of Greenland have begun to think, oh, hang on a minute, if he wants us, then maybe we can go it alone. That we are more important than we thought we were. That we don't need to be attached to Denmark. We don't need to be attached to America. We've got all this, as you say, white gold. We've got all these things. Perhaps we can do it on our own.
Definitely. They see they have opportunities, but I would say that most of the people I've seen comment on this all say that Trump's remarks have not been welcomed warmly. They don't like his wording of ownership of Greenland. They see that as a way of focusing, like that's a way of continuing colonization of the island, and that is exactly what they want to escape from. So they don't appreciate his comments, not at all, but they see that there might be opportunities, of course. And the documentary that I mentioned before was also a part in this. It showed how much money that Denmark has made from it. At least it wanted to show how much money Denmark possibly have made from mining in Greenland, and this showed the Greenlandic people that they can make. They have a lot of resources and they can make a lot of money from that, and they saw they have opportunities. Another source I spoke to also mentioned that Greenland will have to negotiate with Trump or with the US at least. It might take a few years because before they gain independence. But if and when they gain independence, they will have to negotiate with Trump because they need defense and they need security. And Denmark has not provided that for since the Second World War. So they will need American protection, you could say. So for that reason, they need to be involved with America.
Yeah, that is exactly one of the points I was going to make, actually, that an independent Greenland, at the moment protected by Denmark and NATO, but if they are independent, then they are not protected, which I would imagine would make them more vulnerable to a takeover by Donald Trump, unless they partner in some way with Donald Trump.
I think they have to partner with the U.S. I don't. Of course, they can try to get the securities from European countries. That could be a possibility, but I would be surprised to see it. I think they have to still be reliant on U.S. for defense and security protection. U.S. already have several bases in Greenland and has had that for years. So I don't think it's a question. They want to be more independent and thereby being able to negotiate with the US on their own without Denmark. That's essentially what they want. And they know they will also have to trade with America and to get some of these securities that US.
And the Nalaraq Party, I've probably done the same as you with that name, but that's as close as I can come to it. They are looking for, they want immediate independence to be started on, and then to forge those closer ties with the US. But how truly independent can Greenland be if they're in bed with the US? Where do they draw that line on independence and dependence on the US for those financial deals and for those protections? That sounds pretty dependent to me.
To be honest, I think for a lot of the parties, they have not discussed this into detail publicly, at least. They know they are dependent. They are aware of that, but a party like Nalaraq also wants to, they're leading an election campaign, so they want to use rhetoric that says that we want to be independent, while still knowing that they will be reliant and actually dependent on countries such as the US, and also dependent on Denmark. They still get a lot of funds from Denmark, and if they were to be independent tomorrow, they would lose a third of their yearly state budget, and also additional funding for such things as prisons, health systems, police. So it would be very problematic, and it would be very hurtful, not only to the Greenlandic economy, but also to the Greenlandic people if they were to it's not possible, but if they were to just become independent tomorrow. I think even Nalarak says that they want independence within 3 years. So even the party who wants rapid independence, they are aware that it might take some years. And I think even in 3 years, that might be optimistic to be completely independent, including economically independent.
And what did Denmark think of Greenland wanting to become independent and to get closer to the US? And how would this independence play out? Would there have to be a referendum? There's, I think, 57,000 people on the island of Greenland. Would Denmark have a say in this as well, or would it just be the people of Greenland? How would this even actually happen?
It's a bit it's a longer process, of course. As I remember right now, first of all, you would have to have a national referendum in Greenland, and then you would see the result. Are they pro or against? Likely, it seems that they would vote for more independence. Then they have to negotiate with the Danish government, and they have to come to some sort of agreement because, as I said, they will still be dependent on Denmark for a number of years, probably, if not even more. Then that agreement has to be approved by the Greenlandic government, perhaps also the Greenlandic people. It would also need to be approved by the Danish parliament, and then we are getting closer to actual independence. But it takes a lot of negotiation, and with negotiations comes compromises. So we don't know exactly how that would look, but yeah, it's a few years ahead.
How did Denmark feel about it? I mean, this has been rumbling in the background for a while now, but is Denmark prepared to let Greenland go?
It depends on who you ask. I think for a lot of people, they are not necessarily emotionally attached to it, in the sense that they would accept it, and they also see that it's reasonable for the Greenlandic people to want to be more independent. I think historically we've just been woven together in a way that it would also be sad for a lot of people to see them completely leave. But as I said, there will still be connections. A lot of Greenlandic people have family in Denmark. A lot of Greenlandic people also still receives education from Denmark. So I think there will still be ties. And one of the experts that I spoke to when I did these stories on Greenland and the Greenland election said that it doesn't seem that Greenland has alternatives to Denmark, at least not attractive alternatives. So they would probably still prefer a close cooperation with Denmark, and then also, because it's necessary, security and defense protection from the US.
If you were Donald Trump, and I'm happy for you that you're not, but if you were Donald Trump, how would you read this election? Would it give you hope, or would it make you realise the direction that Greenland wants to go in, and it doesn't want to be the 51st or 52nd state of the United States?
I don't want to speculate on Trump's thoughts. I think that's not even for his closest allies. That's sometimes hard to do. But I think it's pretty clear that the Greenlandic population wants to decide what to do themselves. Of course, they are sort of, they have some things that they need to do. They need to make a deal and an agreement with the US, and they know that. But they want to be able to do that independently.
Yeah.
I think what he told Congress,
yeah,
a few days ago, that was pretty clear, that he started to recognize that it was a decision that the Greenlandic people had to make. So I think he recognizes that he needs to do an agreement, and that depends negotiations, and we'll see where that ends up. But I think Trump knows that he holds the cards, in the sense that Greenland doesn't really have any other alternatives when it comes to security than the US at this point.
Fascinating to talk to you, Christopher. Thank you very much indeed. Christopher Frenderson there, who is a Danish journalist based in Brussels. Quick break, back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, it's the phone in. So it'll be a full hour of just you and me having a chat. There's no guests, there's nothing else in that hour. It's the only hour that has been completely stripped of everything, just so you've got the chance to pick up the phone and have a chat. So I hope you take advantage of that. What I want to talk to you about at midnight is the thorny issue of smacking children. Now there's a professor, a human development expert, Professor Robert Larzellery. He says, when I'm asked about my opinion on smacking, I do think that he goes back to his father-in-law's words saying, if you don't listen, you'll have to feel. Right? So that's the old-fashioned way. But there are so many people today who believe the approach to be severely outdated and uneducated. Last week, a group of leading child doctors called on the UK government to ban smacking in England. And they do this we have this conversation, don't we, every now and then. And it's inevitable at some point that is what will happen, that it will be banned. But this professor says, I think banning the punishment would be a mistake. In fact, while I may have had 20 years more education than my father-in-law, I've come to the conclusion that his belief that children who won't listen must feel is sometimes the right approach. Professor Robert believes that a ban on smacking children would be a mistake and that the punishment itself can actually benefit youngsters as they develop. In some situations, smacking a child is unwarranted, and in others it is warranted, even beneficial, and research backs this up too. And then he goes on to say, but let's be clear about this, what we're talking about here, and this is the point I was making a moment ago. The kind of smacking shown by research to be beneficial is an open-handed swat on the buttocks, repeated no more than twice in one go. The smack should not be done so hard it leaves any marks beyond a temporary red mark. It should always be used as a last resort when 2 6-year-olds have refused to cooperate with mild methods like sending them to their room. The aim is to show children that there are consequences for not cooperating with parents' attempts to resolve bad behaviour verbally or, when necessary, with a mild negative consequence. We're not talking about harsh physical punishment such as punching, squeezing, shaking or slapping other parts of the body. These tactics are already outlawed in the UK. So it's called reasonable chastisement. For much of the past century, smacking has been taken as a normal part of parenting, and in the UK, smacking children has been legal since 1860. I would have thought it had been legal way before then, but anyway, there you go. Smacking is outlawed in Scotland and Wales. Gentle parenting advocates argue that resorting to any form of punishment, whether that be sending a child to their room or smacking, means that you have failed as a parent. So any punishment is failing as a parent. Any punishment, naughty step, failing. Because what they think, they argue that parents should be able to explain to their child using words why their actions are wrong. Have you ever tried to explain to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old in words that something is wrong? You can't reason with something that can't be reasoned with. I mean, I would no more have smacked my son than I would smack my dog. But if it was something that I had to do, a smack on the bottom or a smack on the leg, yeah, wouldn't have a problem with that at all. Because you can't reason. You can't reason with a toddler who's just done something really stupid and trying to get them to not do it again. So do you agree with this professor that in some cases, smacking, the way that I've described it, is fine, it's good, it's right, and it's helpful? Or do you think that any punishment of a child is wrong, like these gentle parenting people whose lives must be hell, by the way? Or do you think that there are only some occasions where you should be able to smack your child? And I don't believe that people don't know the difference between a smack and a beating. We all know the difference, right? And people go, oh, I didn't realise. Of course you did. You had the baseball bat in your hand. How is that a smack? Right? It's not the same thing, and people know it's not the same thing. And by the way, banning smacking does not lower the risk of abuse to children, because those children who are going to be beaten with a bat are still going to be beaten with a bat because their parents, that's already illegal, and they don't care. So I'd love to hear from you on this. Were you smacked as a child? Did it scar you? Did you find that it helped you? Did you learn from that? Did you smack your own children? What about when the grandkids are around and that lovely gentle parenting that your own children are doing? How do the kids behave? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And I'm thrilled to say that joining us now is Michelle Polino, Fox News Headlines 24/7 entertainment reporter in Los Angeles. Hello.
Hello, Petrie.
How
so good
are
to see you? I'm well. How are you?
Good. I'm very much better for seeing you. I did watch a bit of, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was probably TikTok or Instagram or whatever.
Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah, because I'm slightly obsessed with watching Americans at the moment talking about how dreadful America is. I'm really kind of obsessed by it. But Rosie O'Donnell has gone to live in Ireland. She's living in Ireland because she had Irish grandparents. Is that right?
Yes, that is true. But I mean, we all have Irish grandparents. Well, at least I do too.
Yeah.
So I could probably go there, and English ones. But she cited the political climate, and she said in the video that she's not coming back till there's equal rights for all. She didn't really delve into it, but we have to kind of look at the history of Rosie O'Donnell and President Trump. It's not been a salutary
love fest. No.
They really dislike each other, and she has been a voracious opponent of his. So I'm saddened by this in many ways, and I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. Because you started this segment saying you're really interested in American reaction right now. I'm a gay woman, and Rosie O'Donnell and Ellen and Portia fled to the UK, were really big figures in the 90s when I came out.
Yeah.
And they are really important figures in kind of the gay visibility movement in the country.
Sure.
But I have no fear whatsoever, none, and I don't quite understand it. And I understand that a lot of my friends are in fear, and I'm trying to have conversations with them. Because they really do feel threatened, and I look at Rosie, and I looked at that video, and I felt horrible. Because I love Rosie, she's great. I loved how she opened up the video. It was kind of funny, kind of hilarious, very Rosie. And I think that the algorithms have led her to believe something different is happening.
I think, I mean, reading between the lines and looking at a lot of the gay community on social media, there's people who are concerned that the possibility of the Christian, fundamentalist Christians getting their hands on the government, which we've seen them getting closer and closer, and the idea that they're going to roll back things like gay marriage or gay, being a parent if you're gay or you've adopted a child. And certainly a lot of people that I've seen are saying, look, we're two mums, and I'm not the birth mother, and I'm really worried that I'm going to lose the rights to my child if this comes down the track. And maybe they're premature, or maybe it will never happen, but I think that fear that it will is real.
I think that fear is absolutely real. You are 100% correct. That's why it hurts my heart so much.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, in the Trump administration, I can name right now 3 people who I know are gay. Scott Bessent, the Treasury, the head of the Treasury, that's his right-hand man, is gay. Tammy Bruce, gay. These are out figures in his administration. I don't think they would be by his side if they felt their rights would be threatened.
I don't know. I don't know.
But
there are people that are around who probably don't agree with him, but are still going ahead with it because it's Trump. Do you know?
Yeah, and I understand that fear because of Project 2025 and all the talk around that previous to the Trump taking office. But I really don't hear that talk any longer.
Maybe it's because it's in action already.
I haven't seen anything in action. So.
Well, I mean, look, I just worry because that would not be, you know.
I think we should
I love
always,
you guys, and
yeah.
I'm just hyper vigilant at the moment. We've got so many Americans coming here now, though. They're buying up all the posh areas. I mean, literally, I think we're the second most popular place after Canada to come and live over here right now. All the rich people are leaving America.
All the rich people are leaving. I understand the fears. I understand the fears because it's a Republican administration.
Yeah, I wonder if this is slightly different. Look, it's been a rocky road, and you know, this shock and awe stuff that he's doing, and then selling Teslas outside of the White House, embarrassing. I mean, it just every day you think, well, it's bottomed out now. Surely it's bottomed out, and then another day there's so you go, oh my God, it wasn't even on my bingo card. Donald Trump becoming a Tesla salesman. It wasn't even on the card. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, that was pretty ridiculous.
I mean, come on. But this is the thing, is that if you've never seen this before, it's scary. And I think a lot of people are just getting out of Dodge, not Doge, as quickly as possible.
Getting out of Doge, getting out of Dodge. I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope I'm wrong, and I just really hope I'm wrong about America. I really do, because I don't want anyone to suffer. Let's talk. Well, apart from Harvey Weinstein, I don't mind so much if he suffers. Harvey Weinstein back in court.
Yeah, he was back in court today because the judge had to rule on a couple of key issues, which I found to be pretty interesting, and I found his rulings to be very interesting, because what the judge did was basically granted the request to call psychologist Dawn Hughes, an expert on psychological traumatic effects of rape and sexual assault. Now, Hughes, you might remember, testified for actor Amber Heard at Johnny Depp's
That's where I know the name, yes.
That's correct. That's correct. So I found that to be interesting. But the other thing equally interesting was the judge also granted a defense request to preclude the term survivor from being used to describe Weinstein's accusers. This is very interesting, and I think it will affect the jury.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
For a country of free speech, there's quite a lot of words you can't use right now. Anyway, let's talk about Disney. Disney scales back the Snow White premiere as controversy over the film grows. Talk me through this. It is just a little girl's film. I don't know why everybody's so worried about it, but
so I think it was last summer, Disney released a teaser for this film, or it was last spring, and in that teaser they had replaced the fairy tale's 7 dwarfs with 7 magical creatures of all sizes and gender. And that made everybody crazy. They said it was too politically correct and woke. And it made Game of Thrones actor Peter Dinklage especially crazy, because Peter Dinklage suffers from a form of dwarfism. And he's like, wait, what are you doing? There's only so many parts in Hollywood, and you cut out like 7 of the greatest parts in history? And there was such outrage that Disney went back to the drawing board and created the 7 dwarves in post, in animation. So they had to de-wokeify or de-PC the film, because it really did offend a lot of people. And so now that the film's hitting theaters March 21st, but there's also some problems with the lead actress, Rachel Zegler, who came out and said, well, I don't really need a prince to save me, and she also came out against President Trump. It became too politicized. A cartoon
Yeah,
became too
like I said, it's a
politicized.
little girl's movie. It just,
Correct.
what are you doing? Just make
Yeah.
it pretty and interesting and fun. That's all you got to
That's
do.
right. Yes, it's just it's a simple fairy tale. Let's keep it fun, lively, and just fantastic. Gal Gadot stars as the evil queen. Come on,
Come
that's going to be
on.
great.
Yeah, exactly. And Disney do these things so well when they're not messing around with politics. Well, it's really sad, isn't it, that they've had to scale back the opening and all of that. But then maybe they'll learn something. Just before I let you go, the Spinal Tap, love, fan. Spinal Tap 2 has been picked up.
Yes, they're going to turn it up to 11. You see, they're going to turn it up to 11.
I love Spinal Tap.
So I love Spinal Tap 2. It's one of my favorite mockumentaries. Rob Reiner directed it, starred as the documentarian of this English rock band who were just fools, and we fell in love with them. And so now they're coming back for This Is Spinal Tap, or Spinal Tap 2, and continuing the end, which is hilarious. That will be out in September, and
Fantastic.
they dropped a trailer for it, and it's hilarious because it just has a hand coming into the screen, turning up the amplifier to 11, and the soundtrack of Stonehenge in the background.
Fantastic. Look, at least we've got something to look forward to. September, Spinal Tap 2. That is so worth looking forward to. And I always look forward to talking to you, lovely Michelle. Thank you very much indeed.
I love talking to you, Petrie.
It's such a pleasure, always. Michelle Pollino there, Fox News Headlines, 24/7 entertainment reporter in LA. Quick break, back with tech.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good evening. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And don't forget, coming up at the top of the hour, John Boothman, a political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland, will be here to go through the newspapers for Thursday. But before that, Phil Dave joins me now, Talk TV broadcaster and producer. Phil, how are you?
Oh, good evening, Lady Hosken. Yes, reasonably well, thank you. I hope you are as well.
Yeah, for a Wednesday.
For a
what can I
Wednesday.
say?
I'm feeling a bit Wednesday-ish,
Yeah,
actually.
it's a Wednesday, so this is my last show of the week. So
I was going to say, it's your Friday, isn't it, really? So you're laughing.
I'm particularly buoyant. Let's talk about lab-grown food. What are we talking about? Are we talking about lab-grown meat?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that sort of what was once a concept of the future actually appears to be within touching distance, because experts are saying that now potentially lab-grown meat could be within consumers' reach within 2 years. So companies, they're already producing products such as meatballs and animal fat in laboratory. But the main reason why they're not on the shelves anytime soon is because regulators such as the Food Standards Agency, or the FSA, have slowed the progress. But now the FSA is saying that they are committed, although to rigorous safety assessments of lab-grown meats, including burgers and sausages and the like, they may allow them to be sold by as soon as 2027. So, of course, although that sounds a long way away, actually that's 2 years away. So it's a bit, well, one step nearer than it used to be.
I'm not sure I understand the process of growing meat. It's not quite the same as growing a tomato, for example, but...
No. I dare say you wouldn't get very far if you spread Miracle Grow over this.
No.
It would be a case of they actually harvest cells from an animal, so to actually replicate the product you want. And then by chemical process that I won't bore you with too much, they actually get those cells to multiply until they've ultimately built something that looks something vaguely like a steak. So it is really rather extraordinary. And even though it might not even sound that appetizing, I suppose that one of the benefits of this, certainly from the point of view of one of the reasons why so many people become vegetarian, is because of an environmental reason. Now, I have to say, as someone who is pescatarian, eat fish, but as someone who is pescatarian and has been most of my life, that's certainly not the reason why I have chosen that particular lifestyle. But I would say that it'd be interesting to see how this does affect those who say that they're vegetarian on environmental grounds, and whether or not that would actually change their mind. I don't think it would change my mind.
Because if there's there would be barely any, the environmental damage that cows do, for example, we know, it's well known, it's well recorded. But some people don't eat animals because they don't like the idea of animals that that are sentient being killed for food. But does that mean they don't
I suppose
like
you could argue
meat?
that this way around they're not being killed for food,
course.
are they?
No.
But, I'd argue that they had to have been killed in the first place to extract those cells.
Not necessarily. If they're living cells, they might just be taken from living creatures. They'd have to be. They'd have to be living cells in order to replicate. So probably not. So I wonder if vegetarians would just go, well, I will eat meat. I was vegetarian for a while, but it was bacon. I couldn't give up bacon. I couldn't. It was just no. And so I went back to it.
So you weren't vegetarian, basically?
No, I was. I didn't have any for about 5
you didn't?
5 years.
I thought you meant you were a vegetarian who ate bacon.
No, it was the one thing. That's what dragged me back to
right.
And I don't eat very much meat, I have to be honest. But I wonder if this will get people saying, well, actually, I do like the taste of meat. I just don't like the theory behind it.
If it's on the basis of animal cruelty, then I would imagine that there will be quite a few people who would probably rethink their vegetarianism if they thought this was an alternative. But the other thing as well to consider is that this could actually help with growing demands. As the population continues to boom, how much meat-based product realistically can farmers all over the world actually cultivate? This is the problem. Actually, how much could they genuinely produce to meet demands? No pun intended. So I suppose that I can sort of understand it, but it certainly churns my stomach a bit.
Yeah, look.
It's ultimately processed food.
That's what I was going to say. If it's highly processed, what else are they putting in it? And that's what offends me, is the idea of this highly processed food that all these companies are trying to get people to eat, and it's not healthy. It's not good. We'll wait and see with that one. This one, body in a box.
To anyone listening, you'd be forgiven for thinking I'm talking about some sort of undertaker.
Yeah.
But actually, no, what this is, it's Cortical Labs, which is an Australian biotech company, has actually unveiled what they call the CL1, which is the world's first commercial biological computer. So that integrates living human brain cells with silicon hardware, and it's been dubbed Body in a Box. So the actual system features lab-grown, again, neurons, which have been cultivated on a silicon chip, therefore enabling them to transmit and receive electronic signals, and so in the same way that a computer would. So the neurons that form networks that sort of process information similar to a biological brain has the ability now to sort of, if you like, be a hybrid of the two, potentially offering advancements in particular, artificial intelligence and machine learning.
But I mean, I know people who run on a couple of brain cells and they're not very bright.
Yes, but the difference is this one has the ability to absorb a bit more than the average couple of brain cells, and that's where it might be a little bit worrying. So, yes, I don't get me wrong, I don't think this is going to take off too quickly because, as I mentioned, it's the first commercially produced one. But you're going to have a spare $35,000 if you want to buy one.
Yeah, this falls into the category of, for me, of just because you can, it doesn't mean you should.
Oh, no, completely. I'm all for that as well. I am actually a great believer, in spite of my love of technology, which as you well know, I'm mildly obsessed with it. I can't see a point to creating something that could either A, be detrimental to human life, and B, just because you can. So, there's got to be some sort of reason to it. Now, if someone was to turn around to me and to say that there may be some sort of long-term, and I'm just theorizing here, so don't hold me to this, but let's just say that hypothetically there was some benefit to, say, someone who maybe has some sort of neurological condition that can't be repaired normally, like through conventional surgery. But let's just say hypothetically this might have some sort of ability to correct that. Then I'd be all for it. I'd say this is amazing. But I don't think this is what the intention is behind this.
Yes, it's very odd. Let's talk about robots that do help, though. This is really extraordinary. Robots smaller than a blood cell could help treat cancer. I love this.
I know, I absolutely love it. You know I am potty about anything that is technology meets medicine. And as a result of it, this actually, they're saying, could revolutionise healthcare in particular, because it could actually provide more precise treatments and actually speed up diagnoses. So, these microscopic robots, as you've already alluded to, which are made from biological materials such as RNA, so that's like DNA, but like another strand of human makeup. And the actual molecule, this is a molecule that presents itself in most living cells and viruses. So it's sort of made up of that kind of material, and actually will have the ability to potentially target areas within the body to focus on things such as maybe tumors, for example. So therefore, this could revolutionize cancer treatment to such a degree that chemotherapy could be targeted. Now, so anyone who is unfortunate enough to have gone through chemotherapy, you probably will know that it means that when chemotherapy is injected into one's body, it is a collection of toxins, of poisons, deliberately designed to destroy cancer cells, where unfortunately the side effects are they can also destroy healthy cells as well. So if this has the ability to target certain cells because of the nanoscopic level that it works at, it potentially means that harmful chemotherapy to the body could become, again, thinking future tense here, could become a thing of the past. So actually the chemotherapy will categorically target the cancer cells.
I mean, it's just wonderful. I mean, and this is the way it's going now, isn't it? That the sort of not taking a sledgehammer to crack a nut like a chemo is, but to have these.
Can I also blow your mind with one other little tiny detail about this? They also reckon that it could be an alternative in the future to some invasive operations. So operations wouldn't be necessary because all they do is they'd inject the nanobots into you that would target the problem area, repair the problem, and therefore you wouldn't even need to be cut open. How amazing is that?
Wow. I mean, it's so science fiction, isn't it? It really is amazing.
It is, but the NHS are in serious talks of actually making this a reality, and that's what I think is amazing. It's still potentially years away, but it's still very exciting.
Yeah. Very exciting. Very quickly, because I think we've only got about a minute or two, AI wingmen bots.
Yeah, so this is just certain dating apps apparently have now taken on this ability to incorporate AI into one's chatting to another. So let's just say that you're on one of those dating apps and you decide to like swipe left or swipe right or something like that, and your ability to communicate with them could be greatly improved, in inverted commas, because AI would tell you what to say to that other person in order to win them over. Now, my argument with this, as is the case, by the way, with several social skills experts, is that they would, not that I'm a social skills expert, but you know what I mean, like social skills experts have warned, basically, that this could diminish people's ability to communicate, because all that will happen is when you do eventually meet up with the person that you, in inverted commas, hit it off with, then the real you will be shown anyway. So what's the point?
Well, it's the same. I understand. I mean, I've never been on a dating site, but it's the same with photographs. Apparently, they put photographs that aren't you, and then when you turn up to meet them, it's like, why would you bother? Because if you don't look anything like that, then I don't
well, it's as if by some miracle that the person's going to fall at the feet of the person that was lying to them in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why they didn't call this the Cyrano de Bergerac bot. I should have done, really. By the way, just before I let you go, thank you for the recommendation for the cocktail bar Kahoot. It was wonderful.
Oh, yes, I heard you had a good night.
I only had tea. I had a cup of tea.
Well, that's disappointing.
No, it was what was in the teacup that wasn't disappointing. Thank you, Phil. Thank you so much. Phil Dave, talkTV broadcaster and producer. Thank you. Now, coming up, stay where you are, because John Boothman will be here to go through Thursday's newspapers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it is fabulous to have your company, and it is also fabulous to be in the company of the wonderful John Boothman, who I think should be a Sir John Boothman, in my honest opinion, political at the Sunday Times in Scotland. I think it suits you, John.
You think so?
Yes, Sir John Boothman. Sounds.
Look, I wouldn't accept anything short of the House of Lords, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's your pension sorted, isn't it?
Yeah, well.
That's you not having to work again. John, it's lovely to have your company again. Before we get into the papers, I wanted to talk to you about this because I know in Scotland the smacking of children in any regard is now illegal. Still not here in England. And there's a professor, Larzellery, Robert Larzellery, a professor of human development, who says smacking children can be good, and it can be good for them.
Look, I think some people would still adhere to that very traditional, position. I think it's probably, quite a common view across the whole of the country. I mean, I have to say, this was something that came to prominence a couple of times in the past 20 years in the Scottish Parliament. First, the Liberal Democrats proposed it, I think, way back about 2003 or so in Scotland, and it was a couple of years ago that it eventually came into law. Do you don't really hear very much about it. But what I do think what you do notice, though, is that I can certainly remember, back in the day going to, let's say, into a supermarket, and you would see, kids getting smacked in the legs or cuffed in the ear or something. You just don't see that anymore. And we also live, of course, in a society that places a lot of sway, talks a lot about children and their rights. And I think, that's all part of a general mood and a general cultural shift that there's been in the country, which really, runs counter to what the professor seems to be suggesting. But, I think a lot of people in the older generation would still have that view.
There's a lot of people, though, as well, that look at the youth of today and say they've got no discipline. There's no discipline. You can't tell your children to do anything. They've got, all these rights, but they don't know what to do with them. They can just say to you, oh, you can't tell me off. You can't take my phone off me. It's against my human rights, or whatever. And what we're seeing is a generation or two generations of children that really don't have boundaries, that don't know what consequences are, that don't understand bad behaviour, and have no respect for the older generation. And many people would take that back to the lack of that sort of discipline. And I'm talking about an open-handed smack, not beating. Those are still happening, even in countries where it's illegal, of course. It's always been illegal, and abuse of children has always happened. We're talking about parents who might smack their child to reinforce a negative consequence. So, we might not see it, but do we see the results of it?
No, look, I think the points that you're making are perfectly reasonable points. All of this feeds into a whole load of things that are happening in our society. One of the things that I was speaking to people in the past couple of weeks was about, for example, the large number of children in Scotland who just aren't going to school. And what can we do in Scotland, and I think this is a big problem across the UK, actually get kids to go back to school. And I think, when I do talk about this, people talk about, doing more traditional things, having attendance officers, having penalties on parents if that doesn't happen. And again, that's, sounds like a sort of old-fashioned point of view, but it's something that works. We take that further into, the adult life of these kids when they grow up. No wonder we are seeing a situation, you could probably argue, where a whole load of kids are not working. This is the stuff the Prime Minister and the Labour government are now having to wrestle with. If we're talking about a situation where 1 in 4 kids are not attending school, how on earth do we really expect when it comes to the time when those children are ready or of an age to go to work, that they're going to go to work?
Yeah, because the discipline isn't there. School is, I mean, well, I think there's a lot of issues with school, but it is fundamentally to teach you to get up at a certain time and go to somewhere and do something and come home at a certain time, which is what is expected traditionally of us in the workplace. And it's a sort of grounding, a training for that. If you've got young people who are just off their own bat deciding, well, that's not for me, I'm not going to do it, A, they're not being educated, but they're also not learning that pattern of what's expected of you as an adult.
I think maybe what we are in for in the next couple of years is a bit of going back to some of the old-fashioned, or what people might call the old-fashioned kind of remedies. I think, you know, what people want to get to amongst the general public is let's do things that work, rather than just do things that might seem liberal or do things that might seem right according to particular cultural norms. You know, there are things not working in this country, and we need to get back to a situation where we can make them work, we can get instill something different among young people. Look, you know, it's got to be said that by and large the majority of young people, you know, are fine people. They have a lot of potential. They exercise that potential, and maybe, you know, don't get an awful lot of credit for it because all we see and all we hear are bad things. But I think, as I say, we might be moving into a period where things are starting to move culturally around all of these kind of issues.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Right, let's move on to the American papers, and we've got the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, just as a really random little paper. There's loads of them in the States, aren't there? We don't see that so many in the UK anymore. And the story that I really wanted to talk to you about on this one was the smashing up of the Black Lives Matter mural. It just seems to me so unnecessary to have done this. This is in Washington, D.C. The Black Lives Matter mural on Monday was demolished.
I think this is something to do with, well, the fights between the Republicans and the Democrats. I think it was the Republicans who threatened cuts in the transportation budget in Washington. I was reading about this earlier. Unless the plaza, which was the where this Black Lives Matters memorial was renamed and that mural taken down. The mural in 2020, I think it was, the then Democratic mayor named the plaza the Black Lives Matter Plaza in order to basically rebuke President Trump, who had sent in federal troops to stop protests over the murder of George Floyd. So there's a bit of history in that. And now I think this is the retaliation coming from the Republicans to get this changed back to where it was. Quite a good picture there of a young woman with a bit of concrete there, which was from the mural, talking about really how sad it was that this should happen.
It just seems so petty and nasty, and the message that is sending to the black people of America, I don't think could be any clearer. I mean, it's so upsetting.
Well, and of course, many of whom voted for Donald Trump.
I know. I don't even have the words. Every day, John, I just think it can't, seriously. And then it does. So that was what I wanted to address on the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. The Washington Post, Ukraine agrees to ceasefire proposal. That was big news. The House GOP, Grand Old Party, circles the wagons on the budget bill. The House Republicans have been incapable of passing a government funding bill without Democratic help since clinching the majority in 2022. America runs out of money in just a few days.
Yeah, and this appears to be some sort of attempt to get a deal over that, and I think it would succeed. And of course, given that it's the Republicans who are coming forward with this stuff, it involves cuts in the federal budget, taking away lots of money from non-defence areas, but boosting defence, and of course implementing some of that. Well, what is he? The de facto Vice President Elon Musk's proposals from the Department of Government Efficiency, which is there, of course, to cut the federal budget.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to come to... Mind you, it's not the first time this has happened. I remember that not that many years ago, federal employees weren't getting paid. Do you remember? Because
yeah, and they closed down the government.
Yeah, they closed down the government because they didn't have any cash at all, any money at all. Education department cuts nearly half of staff. I mean, it is... I'm sure there's people who run around with clipboards who do absolutely flap all, right? But half of them?
Well, look, again, this is another Trump proposal to basically rebalance who controls education in the United States. I think he's trying to unburden the central government of a lot of stuff. I think my recollection is that he wants to get rid of the Department of Education at a federal level completely. So, you know, this is yet another step in that direction, and I'm sure we'll hear more of it in times to come.
And finally, the Trump cast reels in Canada steel tariff threat. President Trump said Tuesday he'd ordered a doubling of the tariff, and then he backed off from that. The financial markets in free fall. They don't like it at all. And many people now talking about a Trump-cession, a recession.
Yeah,
for the first time ever, they've named after the president because they say it's all his fault.
You know, this was supposed to be, what was he going to do? He was going to reduce costs for the American consumer. He was going to boost employment. What this means is completely the opposite. As you say, the stock market's been tumbling. There are fears of inflation. He's caused a whole load of uncertainty, you know, particularly, you know, around those markets. And, well, prices will go up. They import quite a lot of steel, I think, from Canada.
Yeah, most of it. Most of their steel.
And the suggestion is that car prices are going to go up. Fuel prices are going to go up because of the tariffs. They import a lot of fuel from Canada as well. So, Nobody seemed to believe when people were telling the American public during the elections that if you do these sort of things, this is what happens.
It's just mutually assured destruction. I mean, it makes no sense. Both of them, both countries. I mean, again, Canada didn't start this. America did. Trump did. I should say Trump rather than America. But you know, this is mutually assured destruction.
Well, nobody, you know, you introduce tariffs, you're going to end up in a situation not just damaging your own country, but damaging the global economy.
Yeah,
so, as you rightly point out, nobody wins. No,
literally nobody wins on that. It just seems to be. I just wish somebody would explain to him what a tariff is and what it does. I don't know whether he's seen that memo. Right, let's turn our attention to the British newspapers for Thursday. And The Sun newspaper, celeb couples, bundle of joy. This is Michelle and Mark, Michelle Keegan and Mark Wright yesterday revealed they are the proud parents of a baby daughter. There we go.
I'm very happy for all of them.
Me too. And that is literally all we can say about it.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure I know. I think she's an actress, but I'm not entirely sure I know much more. But
I'm not entirely sure that a story like that in the front page sells lots and lots of papers.
No, I have been...
The story above it about Cheltenham and the Gold Cup, right, is something that, you know, there's lots of punters, there's lots of people put on bets in the Cheltenham Festival. It's a huge thing. That story... not so much.
I have been perplexed by The Sun recently and The Star. It's like The Star has desperately badly let me down. But should we take a break? Let's take a break at this point. And when we come back, we'll start on the pink paper, the Financial Times.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, it is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, and with me is John Boothman, who is the political correspondent of the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, the FT City Watchdogs scrap diversity and inclusion drive after firms' backlash. This is sounding a little bit American, isn't it, for us at the moment? But Britain's top financial regulators have axed plans to impose stricter rules for diversity and inclusion after the policy was widely criticised by politicians and businesses.
Yeah, look, this is, as you say, taking the page out of the Elon Musk playbook, and our own government going down the road of some government efficiency. If you read into the story a bit, it says that the Prime Minister tomorrow is going to talk about an audit of a number of government watchdogs to see which ones can be merged, so that we can have a smaller number of them. And again, you know, the bit of the story that you're talking about is it says that, you know, the Financial Conduct Authority and the Prudential Regulatory Authority, what they're doing is scrapping a whole load of reporting mechanisms that they were going to bring in for companies where they would have to produce data on a whole load of characteristics like gender, like race, a whole load of other things, in order to really reduce the burden that, you know, is being imposed on companies and other organisations. So I think part of a bigger drive, though, to reduce the number of government watchdogs. We had an amazing situation in Scotland a couple of weeks ago where the Freedom of Information Commissioner appeared at a parliamentary committee in the Scottish Parliament and spoke about the number of quangos in Scotland and how he kept coming across quangos in Scotland that he had never heard of. Which was absolutely bizarre because he kept getting requests for freedom of information challenges against particular bodies, and he was looking at them and saying, what is this body?
But don't you think it's a little bit rich of Keir Starmer to start saying, I'm going to have a look at the quangos, when he's set up 25 since he report, you know, these inquiries and things like that since his election. I mean, or even in a shorter time than that. You know, they love them at the moment. So it's a bit
I think
rich.
we're in a situation where needs must. I think, you know, it's clear that I think the government is now getting to grips with a situation where the landscape of quangos and watchdogs is all completely cluttered. There's too many of them.
There always has been, John. They've done this over and over, you know, politically, that, you know, we're going to get rid of the quangos. I mean, how long ago was that?
No, no, you keep hearing it. The bonfire of the Quangos. We've talked about it for years, and I look, as I said, to be fair, I think they're trying to get to grips with some of this, but the other thing that's crept into it is all of that language about diversity and equality and inclusion, the stuff we hear from America, and they seem to be jumping on that bandwagon as well.
Well, it's just given them permission, hasn't it? Let's have a look at the Telegraph. It's a fantastic picture there of the Queen, who you would be forgiven for thinking she's just seen something terrible happen. But actually, she's watching a race at Cheltenham.
Well, the Royals have always gone to Cheltenham. It's an absolutely incredible meeting. I think one of the papers is a story I think I saw earlier suggesting that it might snow at Cheltenham. And that would be a big worry if that happened.
Yeah, I saw that myself, thinking, what is going on? But it's a wonderful picture of her. She just aghast, and her friends around her look happier than she does. And the story there, I'll tackle flabby state, vows Starmer. And the King, this is interesting, because this is about as political as Charles can get, really, but he's nailing his colours to the mast here, saying the King has expressed his deepest affection for Canada in the wake of Donald Trump's threat to annex the country. This is really about as far as he can push it, isn't it?
Well, you know, Donald Trump's going around in effect saying that he wants Canada to become the 51st state of America, and in effect the Americans will take over it. Where the King's obviously got an interest in it is the King's the head of state in Canada.
Yeah.
You know, as he is in many Commonwealth countries around the world. I mean, I think we sometimes think we've got them all to ourselves, but actually this is a hugely important thing and a hugely important role. And, you know, look, I can't see at the end of the day, whatever Trump says about Canada ever becoming the 51st state of the United States. I mean,
no,
I think
they don't want it, right?
There would be armed insurrection in Canada or something.
I mean, why would they
happened.
want to be as well? Did you ever see the interview? It was obviously on Fox, where somebody was interviewing, I think, a Canadian, and saying, well, you keep saying you don't want to be part of America. I find that rude. How dare you dismiss us in that way? Why don't you want to be part of America? I've never seen anything like it. And it's kind of like, well, we've got free healthcare, we have gun control, and we like being Canadian. I mean, it was just, it's madness. They don't want to be part of America. And why would they?
Absolutely. I mean, so I can't see that happening. But as you say, that's it. The King's nailed his colours to the mast. I mean, the King, I suspect, could do no other in this situation.
No, he's not allowed to, really, is he?
Yeah.
He's not allowed to say any more than that. But I mean, I just feel so sorry for the Canadians and the way that Trump is so rude to, you know, the leaders there and calls them governors. I think it's disgusting. But Trump says, though, this is on the Daily Telegraph, he will devastate the Russian economy if there's no truce. He's threatened to devastate Russia's economy if Vladimir Putin rejects the proposed 30-day ceasefire. The US president said yesterday the consequences if Russia snubbed the truce would be very bad, but he did not believe it would come to that.
So having browbeaten Zelensky, called him a dictator, humiliated him in the White House, you know, caused all sorts of difficulties in the past couple of days with withdrawing military support, withdrawing intelligence, only to reinstate them. He's now trying to get the Russians to the table. I think Zelensky has been very, very smart in the past few days by very quickly agreeing to the 30-day ceasefire. The ball is now in Vladimir Putin's court. And they're in a difficult position not to accept it. But if they don't, that's Trump saying he'll devastate the economy. He'll introduce even more economic sanctions. Interesting to see this evening the reports and pictures of Vladimir Putin in military uniform, fatigues anyway. In Kursk,
In Kursk,
that part of Russia where the Ukrainians have made an incursion and, set up at least some outposts there, but Putin saying they're fighting back. He's expecting to take more control of it. His answer in the past couple of days to the ceasefire has been to launch even bigger attacks, drone attacks on various parts of the Ukraine. He's now trying to advance in eastern Donetsk as well. So let's see how it goes. But I think certainly in the short look, who knows where this story will be tomorrow? It changes every day. Trump changes every day.
Yeah.
But at least it looks as if he's trying to, on this occasion so far, bring Putin to the table, which is, I suppose, from our point of view, very, very welcome, given where his head has been and where his attitude has been towards the Ukraine.
It's an embarrassment. This is all about Trump, in my view. It's an embarrassment to Trump. Because he was going, oh no, I trust, the Russians want peace, it's the Ukrainians that don't want peace, Putin's a good guy, I back him. This is embarrassing to Trump. I don't think he cares a jot about what this is doing to Ukraine. He's embarrassed because he's played up this great friendship with this evil man and said, no, we're great mates. I can get him to do anything. He'll do what I ask him to do. So he's embarrassed that Putin hasn't immediately come back and said, I agree to a truce because obviously I've always wanted peace. And I think Zelensky, like you said, has played a blinder here. He has called Putin's bluff. He knows Putin, he knows what he's like, and he knows that the last thing he wants is a truce.
So Rubio, I think, and certainly American negotiators are on their way to Moscow at the moment. So we're likely to hear more about this in the next couple of days. We're probably also likely to hear what kind of demands that Putin will try to set in order
we know
to...
he will. He won't just go for a no-condition truce. I mean, this is just a truce. This isn't the peace deal. Sure. But he already has conditions that he wants on that.
Look, it's 30 days that they're asking for a truce. Let's see what the conditions are. Let's see if it happens. But, it's only 30 days. But it's a start. Yeah.
I just think that Trump is going to have a little tantrum if Putin doesn't immediately say yes, and he hasn't immediately said yes. Let's take a break, John, and we will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and through up until the top of the hour, John Boothman is with me, and we are going through the newspapers for Thursday. John, The Guardian, Starmer faces MPs' anger over major cuts to welfare. And we don't know the details yet of this, as a few of them have sort of been leaked out, but I believe it's with the OBR at the moment, the idea of these budget cuts to welfare. This won't affect Scotland, presumably. You'd have your own deal on welfare.
Well, it depends what they cut.
Right.
You know, certainly there are some aspects of the social security system in Scotland that are devolved. However, if they do make a big cut in the total amount of spending, for example, that's allocated to social security and these welfare benefits, then that'll affect the Scottish budget basically correspondingly. Therefore, you know, in not a good way, put it that way. But the Scottish Government needs to make its own choices about some of the benefits that would be similar benefits to those that exist in England and Wales. The big cuts that they appear to be talking about are personal independence payment cuts. Now, I think these are benefits that go to extra support for additional help to disabled people. And I think some 3.6 million people are in receipt of personal independence payments. So as well as cutting those budgets, I think there's also a suggestion that there won't be a general increase in inflation rate increase. They'll be frozen going forward. And that's the kind of thing that is bound to make Labour MPs very, very angry. £5 billion is a lot of money to take away from these kind of budgets. But, you know, this is where the government is at. They have this whole thing about getting people back to work. I think some of the payments that we are talking about, it means that I think they're suggesting that 1 in 8 young people are not going to work, and some of these payments those young people get, and this is some attempt to get them back to work.
Yeah, because I think if you're on PIP or the higher level of PIP, you don't even have to look for work. You're just signed off and you get those benefits. And maybe they're trying to close that loophole. I mean, look, it's going to happen because there aren't that many. The people even in Labour understand that this is a bill that cannot keep growing, and it is exponentially growing. So it has to, something has to be done. But it's unusual for Labour, isn't it?
I think a lot of this is a post-COVID phenomenon. And in addition to that, of course, you know, if we're all in a place now, because again, goodness, he relates to every story, talking about Trump again. If they're going to have to increase the defence budget, the money's got to be found from somewhere. Yeah. So, as you say, not going to be popular among a whole load of Labour MPs. It's not the kind of thing that they thought they would be doing so quickly into the government. Particularly after what was regarded as, you know, some pretty unpopular measures in the budget the last time. And here we are at the spring review and having, you know, welfare cuts in a government that promised there would be no return to austerity.
Yeah, exactly that. And it is even the more shocking to come from the Labour government, where traditionally, I mean, they keep saying now, well, the clue's in the name, we're Labour, we're about work, but they've also traditionally been about welfare and supporting people. And it just seems all the more ridiculous, in a sense, to come from Labour, where they're saying, is this really the only option, to go for low-hanging fruit and to potentially throw the baby out with the bathwater when you're talking about vulnerable people? Is there not someone else you can go after, like big businesses or, you know, higher taxation on the rich? That would be a more traditional Labour route for more money. But are they Labour?
Well, look, they've been castigated for putting national insurance contributions as they were on businesses rather than put up personal taxes. And, you know, as you rightly point out, one of the reasons they're going into this area is because of the exponential increase in the number of people who are claiming benefits. And if you look at any of the graphs, these graphs are telling you that, you know, the only way is up in terms of what they're going to cost in the coming years, and somehow or other they need to get that down. We're also, again, and we've discussed this so many times, we live in a society in this country where, in effect, there are fewer and fewer young people and more old people that we need to support. And somehow or other we need to be able to raise the cash going forward in order to make that happen. You know, at the same time, we have an attitude where we kind of want, you know, Scandinavian levels of public services and American levels of taxation, and you really can't have both.
No. No, I mean, and I think the governments have just got to be more honest with us about that, I think. Just quickly, the Metro looking at Trump tariffs starting, the steel tariffs now that have started. And the president has ignored the Prime Minister's pleas to spare the UK, bringing in the 25% levy at 4 a.m. That was Wednesday morning, 4 a.m. British steelmakers face export sales slump. So that sucking up and toadying up to Trump really didn't do what he hoped it would.
I think in this case it certainly didn't. I mean, that's, you know, part of that general tariff attack on the European Union, and we've been lumped in with all of that. I think the story seems to be in effect telling us that Johnny Reynolds, the business secretary, is going off to America to meet the Secretary of State for Commerce in the hope that they can strike a wider trade deal and do that very, very quickly, starting around AI and technology. And if they can do that, you know, then that would be a big success for the United Kingdom. But you know, he's taken the view, as he calls it, Prime Minister Starmer, that a pragmatic approach by not retaliating to the steel tariffs that Trump's announced is probably the most prudent thing to do in the short term, particularly if he can try and get this deal over the line.
Yeah, well, again, but there's no guarantee, is there, even if you get the deal, that that's not going to change the next day, which is part of the issue with Trump. I mean, that's part of the problem. He already said that I'll come to some arrangement, and now this proves that there was no arrangement, and, you know, you just don't know where you are with this guy.
Well, I think that's right, but, you know, look, there's wider things at stake in all of this as well, right? There's obviously, and we've spoken about this already, the whole Ukrainian situation. I don't think it would particularly do for Starmer if he's trying to be that bridge between Europe and America, to try and influence on behalf of Ukraine, to influence Trump, to then end up in some gigantic bare-knuckle fight about steel tariffs. Yeah. I suspect, look, these things, of course, should not in any shape or form be interlinked, but I'm not sure the transactional president that we have in the United States works in that way. I mean, there's today, you know, the Irish Taoiseach goes to see him. Now, you know, relationships between the Irish and the presidents of the United States going back many, many, many years have always been more than cordial, to say the least. And although the Taoiseach sat in the Oval Office with the president yapping away, he ended up getting the sharp end of Trump's tongue, suggesting, I think, at one point that the Irish were stealing American companies to be based in Dublin, and at the same time, you know, castigating the Irish for being part of the EU, which, of course, according to Trump, was only set up to take advantage of America.
Yeah. Diplomacy was a class I think he missed, potentially. Let's turn our attention to the Times. A couple of stories that we've already covered there. Starmer racing to secure US deal before the blanket tariff kicks in. Back peace or I'll ruin you, Trump tells Putin. And then this one. Married men are more likely to pile on the pounds. It's sometimes said that people let themselves go after getting married and settling down in what might come as no surprise to many wives. Research suggests that this is indeed the case, but only when it comes to men. Women don't let themselves go, apparently, as much.
I think I would agree 100% with all of that.
Are you a living case study, John?
I think 2 living case studies the last time I looked in the mirror.
Why is this? I mean, I suppose it's comfort, not having to put in any effort. I don't know why. Why would it be?
I think it's a bit of quite a lot of things, I suspect. This is a very hard thing to do on there, make an admission like that, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think, yeah, I kind of probably agree with that. Maybe, I don't know.
Has your wife not let herself go then?
No,
There's no way to answer
I'm just worried she's going to poke her head round the door in a minute and start shouting at me, to be quite honest. Why did you not answer that question properly, she'll say.
Oh, I don't want to get you into trouble, but it is funny. Let's move on. I want to address this before we go to the break. Nicola Sturgeon has announced that she's leaving the Scottish Parliament next year. Is she really, does she have a choice at this stage?
Yeah, she does. I mean, look, Nicola Sturgeon's 54 years old. She could remain in the Scottish Parliament.
Wow.
Yep, she's only 54 years old. As she said today, when she leaves the Scottish Parliament next year, next May, when this term of Parliament is over, she will have been in that Parliament for actually half of her life. Because she was there at the very beginning. There's, 129 members of the Scottish Parliament. There's only, I think, about 10 of them who are still there, who were in the first Scottish Parliament and who've been there just about the whole way through. Nicola Sturgeon has been in politics. I can remember Nicola Sturgeon comes from the next town from me in Ayrshire, and I can remember Nicola Sturgeon as a shy, awkward, kind of geeky young woman. She called herself that today. And, here she is at 54. She's been, a member of the Scottish Parliament, as I say, for more than a quarter of a century. She's been the First Minister, the longest-serving First Minister. She's 54. There are other things she can do with her time and with her life. I think some of those options have been closed off because I think, despite the fact that you'll remember this, I think, during COVID, she was immensely popular.
Yeah, she was.
Popular, but not just in Scotland. I think across the whole of the UK, I would come across a lot of people from England, women in particular, who were great admirers of her. They were, that was at a time when Boris Johnson was getting into all sorts of difficulties as the Prime Minister. So she had this, stellar position for a while in terms of where she stood in the public's esteem in politics in the country. Now, as it happened, following COVID, it's kind of just about being downhill most of the way for Nicola Sturgeon.
Is there still a case against her?
She's still being investigated by the police. Her legacy is a lot of her legacy is kind of shot to pieces. The whole gender recognition thing really, really was toxic in Scotland. Opinion in the country is very, very divided. She's regarded as a very Marmite politician. You either like her or you really don't like her. And, here she is, 54 years old. She's moving on. She's doing something different. She's already, she's got a book coming out, a personal, no-holds-barred memoir coming out in August or September. She is already being paid an advance of £75,000, the first of 4 advances, adding up to £300,000. She's getting some quite good, she gets paid for the odd column. She'll still be getting paid as an MSP in the Parliament. She's not actually been around the Parliament very much. She's been criticised for not turning up. She's been criticised for making hardly any contributions in the Parliament. So I think in general, it's kind of time for her to move on today.
Yeah.
We kind of knew it was going to happen, but she announced it today.
And she's also, in her personal life, is she not filing for divorce as well? Is that right?
Exactly that. And of course, the police investigation continues. Operation Branchform, it's been going now for nearly 4 years, and we will need to see what the outcome of that is. But her reputation is not what it was.
No. It certainly isn't. Let's take a quick break, John, and we will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, and with me until the top of the hour is John Boothman, the political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Another story that I wanted to just talk to you about before we get back to the front pages, and that is The Guardian and Telegraph are saying that the UK has dropped down the list of affluent nations. It's not really surprising, is it?
Well, I just think this is really interesting. It says that, some areas of the country, it says 4 areas in the country, in particular talks about Birmingham, now rank below the poorest areas of France, Malta and Slovenia.
Wow.
I mean, I think most people in the country probably couldn't point out Slovenia on the map. Never mind tell you anything about it. And what they're suggesting, and they are suggesting this is a warning perhaps for Rachel Reeves in relation to these budget cuts that she's talking about, that after 10 years of welfare cuts in this country, this is kind of how you get to the position that this report's talking about.
Yeah, there's no such thing as not having a consequence to that, is there, really? The Times has got this, your newspaper, Disney's hopes for the new Snow White dwarfed by woke backlash. I was talking earlier to Michelle Pollino about this in LA, but this is really cost them, hasn't it, this?
I think this is an amazing story. I mean, I suppose I should say, I can remember as a kid going to see the original Snow White at the pictures and being utterly terrified. I think I was about 6 or 7 at the time, and I didn't sleep for weeks after, the witch and the apple and all that stuff. But I mean, again, there's a bit of kind of, is nothing sacred. The trailers for the new Snow White doesn't depict any dwarfs, right? I mean, there's been a whole row about the choice of, who plays Snow White. It's a Latina actress, and some outrage that it's an Israeli actress who's the evil queen, right? I mean, it's, I don't know, it's kind of, it's a bit too far for me. It's a film. I mean, I've watched a couple of the trailers and it actually looks really, really good.
Yeah, it's a film for little girls. Why
Yeah.
are people getting so exasperated about it? You know, people go, she's not Snow White. Well, why do you care? Have you got a Snow White dress that you want to wear? I mean, I don't understand what your problem is. I mean,
there's a great line here at the end of the piece in the Times which says there was consternation at the film's apparent reimagining of the Seven Dwarfs as a diverse group of magical creatures of all heights, races, and genders.
Listen, Disney's got to learn to not get involved in politics. Like Elon Musk is learning the hard way that if you get involved in politics, you lose money. I'm just saying, I
think this cost $280 million, so it's a big investment.
Do you know what will happen is that Donald Trump will be out the front of the White House flogging tickets for it. It's fine. That's what he does now. He was flogging cars and then he'll just flog tickets. It'll be fine. The Daily Mail is for Thursday, a record 5 million forced to pay higher rate of tax. And this is where we look at these bands that are not raised. And this sort of, we're not going to tax you. But then if they leave the earning band where it is, more people tip into that tax bracket.
Yeah, if they freeze the thresholds, that's what happens. But again, we're back. This is the kind of story that you would suspect to see in the Daily Mail. I don't know. It's the first time I've heard that perhaps Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, may be considering doing exactly this. But as you rightly point out, it's traditionally the kind of thing that chancellors do in order to raise a bit of extra cash.
It's by stealth. Yeah, it's just stealth tax. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't help thinking that although Starmer has got a huge majority. I mean, wiped the Conservatives off the map to a certain degree in all sorts of parts of the country. I don't know that it was particularly wise to make the commitments that he did about taxation.
Yeah.
And I think now what's happening is all of this is kind of coming back to bite him. And again, if we're going down the road of, welfare cuts for the disabled and down the road of stealth taxation and stuff, it does make some of the promises that were made during the election appear a bit hollow.
Yeah, totally, because it's still higher taxes. It's just that they can pretend they had nothing to do with it. The Eye benefits turmoil in number 10 as Labour MPs fight Reeves. We've had a look at that story earlier on. The Mirror, trade war hammer blow again. Another story about the steel tariffs sparking fears of more job losses in Britain, and we know they're trying to sort that out. And here's a story on the Star. Cold Cup, snow at the races. This would be really weird, wouldn't it, to have snow there?
Yeah, but, again, it would be a huge disappointment to the many, many, many thousands and thousands of, people who are interested in racing in the country, and people, it would not be good for the betting industry either. So let's see what happens and whether or not it will snow after all.
Yeah, we've had a false
I get very
spring.
wary of weather stories. Sometimes it just doesn't quite turn out to be that way.
No, I'm just hoping we don't get frost in London, because I've just unwrapped my banana trees and they will die in a frost. So I'm just fingers crossed that doesn't happen. They seem to have survived the winter, but I don't think they'd survive a frost. So it's just all about me, really. It's just being selfish. The Daily...
It's warm enough for banana trees in London.
Yeah, you don't get bananas, but you do get the trees. Yeah.
Right,
Totally.
okay.
I mean, I've got a grapevine as well. I don't make my own wine, but I do have grapes. So, yeah. It's all happening down here in the tropics.
It definitely is.
Compared to Scotland. The Daily Express, caring Queen's support for rape survivor Giselle. This is Giselle Pellico, who was the woman who was raped how many times by men that his
72 men, I think.
Yeah,
was
I
the
think
number.
it was.
Yeah.
That came into her home and while she was drugged, were raped and filmed, therefore, by her husband. I mean, she's got to be Woman of the Year, in my view. What an extraordinary, brave woman Giselle Pellico is.
A heroine in France, and very humble woman. I absolutely incredible story, ordeal that the woman was put through by her husband and all of these others as well. Words fail me to describe it.
Someone she absolutely, obviously trusted. She had no idea this was happening to her. Extraordinary.
And over an incredibly long period of time as well.
And she waived anonymity, didn't she? Because in France, if she wants anonymity, then the perpetrators get anonymity. And she said, no, they're not getting away with this. An amazing woman in the worst ever situation. The other story that just before we go, I've probably got about a minute with you on this, but Texas measles outbreak grows. This is counties in California, New York and Maryland detected their first measles cases of the year, and the CDC has warned travellers to be vigilant. And this is because of the lack of vaccines.
Well, I don't think, I think, I suppose I'll use this word ambivalent. Robert Kennedy Jr., the health secretary under Trump, has been somebody who, is not very positive about vaccinations, would probably be a mild way of putting it. And look, if you don't vaccinate people, this is the kind of thing that happens. And measles is a very, very dangerous and debilitating illness. And 220 cases in Texas, that's where it started. It's been growing over the past couple of weeks, and now it's starting to appear in lots of other places as well.
And we had almost eradicated it from the UK, almost completely eradicated it, and unfortunately it's back. John, thank you. It's been wonderful talking to you, as ever. It's a highlight of my week, so thank you very much indeed. John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Now, though, it is over to you to fill the next hour. That's your job. No. What it is an hour-long phone-in just for you, so that you get a chance to talk back. And what I want to talk to you about is smacking children, because a professor, a human development expert, has come out and said that smacking children can be good. So do you agree with that? Do you think that children do have a distinct lack of discipline at the moment, and maybe the odd smack would help sort that out, some negative consequences? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. It is Petrie with you now until 1 o'clock, and this is your hour, this is your chance to talk back. It is cleared of all guests, there's nobody else around, it's just you and me. So what I want to discuss with you this morning is smacking children, because there's a human development expert who has said that smacking children can be good, and he has shared the science on this as well in this piece, which I'll get to a little bit later on. He says that a ban on smacking children would be a mistake, and that the punishment can actually benefit youngsters as they develop. In some situations, he said, smacking children is warranted, even beneficial, and the research backs this up too. He said, first, let's be clear what we're talking about, and I am not talking, this is not talking about abuse. Abuse is always wrong. It is absolutely wrong. He is saying that a smack is something that is controlled. It is an open-handed swat onto the buttocks, repeated no more than 2 times in one go. So firm, but not violent. A smack should not be done so hard that it leaves any marks beyond temporary redness. It should always be used as a last resort. And he said, but when things like sending them to their room doesn't work. But he's battling against this new gentle parenting but don't believe in any form of punishment, and I mean even being sent to their room, or being put on the naughty step, or being deprived of their Nintendo game console, or whatever. I just remembered, because I used to take my son's Nintendo off him. That would be his punishment mostly. Smacking is currently outlawed in Scotland and Wales and 67 other countries, but could soon be made illegal in England. He says that we're not talking about harsh physical punishment, such as punching, squeezing, shaking or slapping other parts of the body, or torture. These tactics are already outlawed in the UK. So I want to ask you if there is ever an acceptable level of smacking your child. Is it okay to smack your child in the way that I have described? Right, we're not talking about abuse. I was brought up in quite a violent household. My stepfather was abusive. I know the difference between a smack and a beating, right? I know the difference. So I'm not talking about being beaten. But a smack, is it really a toxic and dangerous thing to do to a child? Do you think it turns them more violent? Do you think that it teaches them that hitting somebody is fine? Do you think that the only way to bring up a child is with this gentle, no consequences parenting? Just a discussion with your mum. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Just need to let you know that calls are charged at the national rate, and you can text me as well. Put the word talk and your message to 87222. Right, let's speak to Daniel now, who's in Shropshire. Hello, Daniel. Whereabouts in Shropshire are you?
I'm in Shrewsbury.
Shrewsbury. Okay, my sister is in Ludlow, which I love. I'm up there a lot. Anyway, Daniel, what do you think? Do you agree with the professor here, or do you think there's no occasion that it is okay to smack a child?
Oh, I think it's absolutely fine to smack children. It never did me any harm.
Were you? In what way were you smacked? So a lot of people go, "Oh, the people say it never did me any harm." It probably did. It probably ruined you in some way.
No, not at all. Look, my dad was a very firm disciplinarian. My parents were very old-fashioned. My dad was the firm disciplinarian of the family. But he was always firm but fair. You know. And I'll give you a perfect example, a couple of examples. I remember when I was 14 or 15, many years ago, and testosterone-filled teenager in school, as most teenage boys are. And I stormed out of a science class one day, and my head of year grabbed me by the shoulder. And I turned around, grabbed him by the tie, and slammed him against the wall. So my dad got called into the school, went into the head teacher's office with the head of year. Head of year told my dad what I did. My dad told me, stand up. I did. And he whacked me straight round the back of the head so hard that I went to my knees, and he went, right, stand up again. And he said, he looked at my head teacher, looked at my head of year, and he went, you have my permission that if my son ever does that to you again, to do exactly what I just did. And I tell you what, I never did it again. And this is the whole point. A smack should be something which says, you don't do that again.
But that sounds like more than a smack. I mean, a big thwack around the back of the head could have given you concussion.
Yeah, because I'm not... See, this is the thing. If you look at kids from, I was born in the 90s. If not one child, one person I went to school with, or anybody, even my sister here who's 5 years older than me, none of them are in prison. There's no... Kids today are bringing knives into schools because they're not afraid of their teachers, not afraid of authority. And the whole point, I've always said, punishment should be something you are afraid of. You should be scared of being punished. And pain is punishment.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because I still am scared of the police, right? I mean, I don't. Yeah, I'm respectful. I wouldn't want to ever be stopped by the police or anything like that, right? And I think that did come from my childhood because when we were very young, we were taken to visit a prison, right? Very young. Mm-hmm. And we all walked around there. I think it was not a real prison. I can't even remember much. But all I remember thinking was, no. I don't ever want to end up in one of these places. And I think a certain amount of fear is healthy, right? We're taught to fear fire, for example. Fear is good. Fear is what protects us. And fear of authority is also good. But we're told that it isn't good anymore, that you shouldn't fear authority. You should just respect it.
And that's the problem. That breeds a generation of weak people. Who do not respect authority, do not respect other people. I mean, I can probably, I see kids today who are walking around hoodies, masks, during school, during the hours they should be at school, and they're not. And I'm sitting there going, I'll give you one perfect example of the most disgusting thing that I have seen from a child. And I tell you what, I hate to say it, I really had to hold myself back from smacking the kid myself, and I didn't even know the kid. So I was walking to the shop for my mom, and between my mom's house and the shop is a children's play park. And there was this kid, I'd say about 7 or 8 years old, wearing a hoodie, trackies, and he was banging a stick against the park fence. And on the other side of the park, a little girl walked on. No parents, about 3 years old, I'd say, max. Wow. 3 years old, no parents in sight. Do you know what this little boy shouted at this little toddler?
Can it be repeated on radio?
I will make it clean.
Thank you.
Make it clean. He shouted, I will F-word rape you to this toddler. And I tell you what, I didn't touch the kid, but I chased him straight out of that park. I roared him and I chased him straight out of that park.
Oh, my God.
And I sat there. If I had ever said something like that and another adult had heard me as a kid, my dad would have beaten me black and blue for something like that.
And that is unbelievably shocking. But again, you see, when we were children, the consequences of us misbehaving outside our home were as bad as misbehaving inside our home, because some adult would step in and go, don't you ever, do that, whereas adults are too scared to do that now.
At the same time, though, I mean, even up till when I was a kid, if we misbehaved and a copper saw us, the copper would say, "Right, where do you live?" And he'd take us. And, we'd tell our parents what we'd done. But coppers don't do that anymore.
I think what has happened is that we've become scared of our children. That they're not scared of us anymore. Because we've
be the other way around.
We've taught them that you shouldn't be scared of adults, so they're not scared of us. They're not.
No, kids should. You see, there's that equal balance, and I say my dad had the perfect balance. He was the firm disciplinarian, but at the same time, he was the most affectionate, loving father I could ever ask for. He had that perfect balance, and it's all about having that.
And do you think that without the fear of negative consequences, such as a slap, that you would have gone off the rails? Do you think that you would have behaved differently?
Yeah, quite possibly, because my mom didn't have that same discipline, and it was sort of, I know it sounds bad to say, as I've gotten older, obviously this has changed, but as a kid, I didn't have that same, because I didn't fear my mum, I didn't have that same level of respect.
No, you respect your mum when you get older, because then you realise what she's given up for you. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, my parents, when we did something wrong and we got a smack, my parents then would only have to, like if I was doing something bad, my parents only have to go 1, 2, what happens if I get to 3? I'd stop immediately, because I knew what would happen.
And with your mum, would she say, that famous line, "Wait till your father gets home"?
Oh yeah. Yep. Straight away, and that's the case of I'm getting a wallop.
And did you go on to have children yourself, Daniel?
No, unfortunately not. Simply that's a personal reason. Right.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I just wondered if you do you think that you would have been like your father or like your mother?
I'd have been like my father, definitely. And at the same time, I joined the army at 16. I spent 6 years in. Ever since I came out, I've worked in health and social care. I've had a good life. I can't complain. I turned out fine, so I see no problem with it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think the too many children at the moment, like I said, we're scared of them, not the other way around. And a lot of people say, well, they shouldn't be scared. They shouldn't be scared. Well, I don't. A little bit of fear is a good thing, like I said.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Fear is respect is fear.
Well, it's all, you respect a fire, you respect a car, you fear the road, you fear, getting caught doing something by the police. You fear that there should be fear, but we're trying to mitigate fear somehow and make it all, there's nothing to fear, there's nothing to worry about. But I think that is creating a whole different generation of adults.
Yeah, we're going to end up seeing more people going to prison because they don't fear police, they don't fear adults. I mean, when I hear that kids are bringing knives into school, so I left school 15 years ago, which when you think about it is not that long.
It's not that long, no.
No, and a knife in school was unheard of. The most you ever got was kids having a scrap after school, a bit of a punch up.
I think the most dangerous thing when I was at school was the pair of compasses that you would stab into somebody if they upset you.
We never even had that. I think the nearest thing to a stabbing I ever saw was somebody put a drawing pin on someone's seat.
Blimey. Yeah, look, I don't know. There's a lot of people that wouldn't agree with us, though, Daniel, that they would say that fear is a bad thing and that, children shouldn't fear their parents or they shouldn't live in fear of getting a smack. But I don't know, when we look at the consequences of not disciplining children, it seems that we've gone far too far the other way.
The simple way to look at the solution to this is look at children up until, I'd say, the mid-2000s, 2010, and children today. Generations before that, they were brought up with firm, hard discipline, are far more well-behaved, have more respect and do not commit anywhere near as many crimes as today's generation of kids.
Yeah, I mean, there might be other reasons for it. People would bring into that discussion social media, peer pressure, gangs, you know, all of that. But definitely, I would say discipline has got a place on that list. I really would. Daniel, brilliant call. Thank you very much indeed. Daniel there from Shropshire. Let's take a quick break. Back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. It is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and we're talking about smacking children because as a professor of human development, that's his expertise, Professor Robert Larzellery has said that actually punishment can benefit youngsters as they develop. And he goes on to say, look, I'm not talking about abuse, I'm talking about an open-handed smack on the bottom, you know, no more than twice at any one time. One argument for banning smacking, he says, is that it protects children from abuse. However, studies show this isn't necessarily the case. In 2000, Germany banned smacking, but one study carried out 7 years later found that only 32% of German parents knew that mild smacking had been banned. Although they were less likely to use mild smacking, they were more likely to resort to more severe punishment, such as beating with an object, than German parents who thought that mild smacking was still legal. So in other words, those parents were never going to carry out mild smacking. They were always going to carry out more severe beatings. Without access to smacking, the smacking that he's talking about, parents are more likely to lose control and lash out at their children. And he's done lots of studies, and there's lots of boring numbers and stuff. There's another argument, he says, that the smacking, that some people say makes children more violent. But research suggests that, in fact, the opposite may be true. One 1999 study found that aggressive preschoolers who are not punished tend to be just as violent 20 months later if their mothers reasoned with them a lot. Those that are punished, first with being sent to their room, and if that fails with smacking, are much less likely to be aggressive within the same period of time. Smacking can benefit children and improve their lives in the long run. Smacking is the most effective measure for responding to oppositional defiance. This is a scientific term for persistent refusal to cooperate with parents. A 2001 study shows that children with unaddressed oppositional defiance are more likely to go on to commit crimes. Smacking can help such children to listen and cooperate with milder consequences. So yeah, there's a lot of study stuff in here, but he's saying, look, you know, it helps. It can help children to be smacked, not beaten, but smacked. So do you agree with that, or do you think that it's horrific that this gentle parenting that since the 1980s, a growing trend towards a new approach for caring with children, and that is known as gentle parenting. And gentle parenting advocates argue that resorting to any form of punishment, whether that's sending the child to their room or smacking, means that you have failed as a parent. So you're supposed to sit down with your 3-year-old and reason with them and explain to them that what they did wasn't very nice. But there's no consequences to that behaviour other than a sound debate or conversation that they probably don't understand anyway. So that is the consequence of bad behaviour for these gentle parents, is nothing. And then they wonder why their children, when they're teenagers, don't listen to them, and they go, why is my child refusing school? Why is my child not doing what I tell them to? Because they've never, ever had any consequences. I'm not even talking about smacking here. There's just no consequences. Just a little conversation. So is that the right way to bring up a child? You may absolutely agree with that. You think, yeah, that's the way to do it. Sit down and reason with them. 0344 499 1000. Mike is in Florida. Hello. What time is it in Florida, Mike?
Right now it is, let me grab my phone out here, 8:24 in the evening.
8:24 in the evening. And how come you've stumbled across this program?
I've had the Talk app for years. I really enjoy the programming that you guys have. And speaking about the discussion we're having, I see several problems.
Okay.
I'll give you one example, and I'm sure you've seen this. So I'm in the grocery store, and I see a young lady, and she's got baby in tow. Baby's probably about, 3, toddler.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, Mommy, I want candy. No, honey, you can't have it. Screaming, yelling, tantrum, throwing. I tell you what, the young lady grabbed the candy and threw it in the cart, and I just think to myself, no, sweetheart, that's not the way you handle that. We can't always have what we want when we want it. And that's a big problem.
That is a huge problem. I mean, I would have grabbed I have done in the past, grabbed him and walked out the shop and not bought anything.
Right. And I've seen people, take them into the restroom and, couple smacks on the bum, whatever. But that's a crucial lesson. And when you always give in to them, well, no wonder these kids are, the way they are. The other thing, I think parents focus on wanting to be their children's friend, and that doesn't work. You're not their friend. You're the boss. I
love that. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I remember the most repeated thing I said to my boy was, I'm not your friend, I'm your mother.
Right. And then to round this out, I'll tell you a story that happened to me personally. Now, I'm 50 years old now. When I was like 8 or 9 years old, I stole some candy from a corner store type place. And so I came home, and my mom knew I didn't have any money, and she, where'd you get the candy? I said, well, I just got it. She's like, no, where did you get the candy? And I looked at her, and, they have that look in their eyes. It's like, if I lie to Mom and she finds out about it, so I said, I stole it. She said, okay, all right, that's all I needed to know. Puts me in the car. We go back to the store. She said, sit in here for a minute. So she goes in. Now, I assume that her and the store owner were in on this. Next thing I know, the police car pulls up, and the officer gets out. Hello, young man. How you doing? I said, I'm doing good. And he says, well, I heard that you broke the law, and people who break the law go to jail, so you're going to have to come with me. And he put me in the back of the cop car, and this is what he told me. He said, and this is brilliant. I'll never forget this officer until the day that I die, and this is how he ingrained it in my head. He said, one time, that's a mistake. We give you a free pass. If it happens again, okay, now it's not a mistake anymore. And I was so terrified. I never stole anything from that day forward. And like I said, I'm 50 years old now, and it put me on the straight and narrow. So it's a brilliant way to teach me, that you break the law, there's consequences. And I remember when he put me in the back of the police car, I was bawling. I was crying. And so, yeah, it was well ingrained in my head. And thank God he did that, because who knows how it would have turned out if I was allowed to. The way these kids talk, just like the previous caller, I wish I would say some of the things these kids say to that. I would have been beaten into next Sunday and back. But like you said, we had that fear, right? When your dad said, do something, he didn't mean 5 minutes from now or 10. He said right now. And
so why do you think it is that a system that seemed to work, right, where we did have that fear, and part of respect, I think, is fear. You fear the police. I fear the police, and any idea that I would be a criminal just terrifies me. I couldn't even the consequences. I couldn't live with the consequences of breaking the law, right? Because I fear consequences. So why change that to a system of this gentle parenting, where there are no consequences for bad behaviour except to sit down, chat with your mum?
Well, you know what? I believe that I think that gentle parenting is rubbish, right? In other words, what's tried and true, what always works, stick with that, because I think it's a sign of just the overall decline of morality and decency. And you turn on the TV and you see people that have barely nothing but their underwear on. And that's what these people are promoting. And then they turn around and they wonder, why are women getting raped at high numbers like what they are? Look at some of the music. Look at all the visual things that are put on the media. It doesn't surprise me, and it's a horrible thing to say, but, I think it's just the collapse of morality and decency and having.
But do you have to? I mean, this is the question, though, isn't it? It's about, does a smack, does smacking a child teach them those consequences, or does it teach them, or does it turn into abuse? Does it become abusive? And a lot of people. Did you go on and have children, Mike?
No, ma'am.
No. Okay. So I just wonder how you would treat your own children. Do you think that you would have been very disciplined?
Well, I think any problem that rears its head, the earlier you catch it. Like I said, when I was 8 and 9 and I stole, she took me right to the store, and the police. I think that's how you have to handle. If you let them get away with it one time and then they get away with it another time, and then they're like, oh my God, well, I can do whatever I want. All they're going to do is come out and maybe have a talk with me, and then they're going to send me on. No, I think we need to bring back, if you have no self-control and you get violent, or you cause a scene, or you can't control yourself, maybe you need to be in a hospital or some type of facility where you don't, pose a danger to the rest of us. But the way to not make it to where they pose a danger is to discipline. When I got spanked, certainly by today's standards, it would have been abuse. But, I'm doing well. I've never been locked up. I follow the rules of society because I was taught. I was taught in no uncertain terms. You do this, this will happen.
And do you find you have
consequence,
do you have respect for the older generation as again? Because that's another issue that we've got, isn't it? I was saying a moment ago that we're scared.
100%.
Yeah, we're scared of children. They're not scared of us, adults, but we're scared of them.
I think you have to blame the lawmakers for that, right? Because they're the ones inevitably that passed these laws that limited our ability to discipline children. You know, in some places, just merely putting your hands on them is enough to get you thrown in jail.
Yeah.
So how do you expect to rear children properly when the law says, oh, well, you put your hands on them, now you're the criminal, now you're the bad one? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
And no discipline at schools.
I've gotten the belt, I've gotten the extension cord. You name it, I'd probably, whatever she could grab a hold of when I needed it. And trust me, I got it, and that's why I'm who I am today. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but, you know, compared to what I see around here, I just thank my lucky stars that I had parents that loved me enough to do what they needed to do to make sure I didn't get in trouble.
So that's an interesting statement, that they loved you enough to smack you. And that's kind of almost what this professor is saying as well, Mike, that it's about, you know, this can do them good, this can teach them those consequences. And I just think we're in a consequence-free world almost now, that these young people, they don't have consequences, they don't. And there's no discipline at schools, really, there's no, you know, none of that is going on. So why would they be worried? Why should they?
I think another thing, and I don't know how the laws are in the UK, but in the US, you know, anything you do before the age of 18 is like a juvenile record. So unless if it's something that's absolutely horrific where you went and, you know, like butchered your whole entire family, but unless it's other than something like that, when you turn 18, they put you out there and you don't have a record, or if you do, it's sealed. So nobody can. So I think that, you know, let's face it, right? I would think that by the time you hit 15 or 16 years old, you're still a child, but guess what? You still know right from wrong. So I think that if you do something that's bad enough, even at the age of 15 or 16, I think it should go on your record and it should not come off. Because most people, even though the brain is still developing, the basic you know, you should know that, well, if I go in the store and rob it, that's wrong. If I hit this guy over the head and take his iPad, that's wrong. You know, kids know that. So we have to hold them responsible, hold them accountable.
I agree. I think they should be held responsible. Well, just quickly before you go, what do you make of parents before the age of 18 before their children are 18 being made responsible for their children's crimes? Because in America, there's been a couple of cases, hasn't there, where school shooters' parents have been held culpable, if not responsible.
Well, I think it depends. If the child goes out and obtains the firearm through their own means, that's one thing. But if you know, accidentally left the gun on the table and, you know, Johnny's going to school and he's like, oh, there's a gun on the table, let me grab that. And you know, puts it in his bag and he does something. In those types of cases, I can see a little bit of culpability on the parents. But I think it depends on the circumstances of what happened and how it happened, you know, how they obtained the gun and so on and so forth.
I just think if we're not going to hold the children responsible, then we have to hold the parents responsible for bringing up the child to have that level of nastiness about them. I don't know. Mike, it's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Please call again.
Yes, thank you so much.
Good, excellent. Thank you very much, Mike. Right, I'm going to take a very quick break. He called me ma'am. I like that. It's very respectful. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. A couple of messages I want to read out before I go back to the phones. Busybird has said punishment does not have to be physical. Smacking does no good. Negotiating and explaining that if they do X, they will lose X, like an iPad time, loss of phone, TV programs. You also need to promote good behaviour. Problem is now it's gone too far the other way. Most parents don't discipline. They're frightened to discipline because they don't want to be an authoritative figure. And they also, there's a hell-bent on, oh yeah, my daughter's my best friend. It's like, really? I just find that really weird. You know, I mean, I adore my son, and we can spend hours on the phone just laughing, but he's still my son, and I'm still his mother, and that is the end of it. So I don't buy this friendship thing. They have to know they feel safer with boundaries, children. Joanna from Salisbury said, my mother mercilessly beat me with my horse riding whip. It didn't make me a better person, just angry. I rarely hit my children. I just rattled the wooden spoons in the pot and they knew they'd gone too far. They were off, but the fire in me was horrendous. But I had to control it. I broke the chain, and my daughters don't slap their children. With my grandchildren, it was a fireman's lift over the shoulder. They hated it, but it soon stopped them. But you see, mercilessly beating you with a riding crop is abuse. That's not a slap. That's not a smack, is it? That's child abuse. That's abusive behaviour. That's hitting with an object, and that is against the law, and actually always has been. So that's abuse. And that's not. I can understand why you went the other way, but that is not the same thing as I'm talking about. Debbie said, your caller from Florida, Mike, is spot on when he says about so many parents today treating their children as friends, and the trend of gentle parenting is creating massive behavioural problems. I've worked in early years for years. The decline in behaviour in children is huge. Parents think it gives them an easier life to not discipline, but in fact it is the opposite. Smacking is not required, but discipline and boundaries are in short supply. Children thrive when they have boundaries and expected behaviour. I hate all this gentle parenting nonsense. And I agree, I totally agree with you on that. They do store it up for a painful teenage years, I tell you, if there's no boundaries. And children do feel safer with boundaries. It's not difficult. They do feel safer. They don't want you to be their friend. They want you to be that special person who will always be there for them. Friends come and go, you know, and that's very, very different. Let's go to the phones now. And Carol is in Manchester. Morning, Carol.
Good morning again.
How are you?
With that. And I've got to say, I really am saddened. You know, like I've just found out tonight that you had some problems regarding with your childhood and whatever. And mine was horrendous. I'll just tell you that. Absolutely horrendous. That's another show and whatever and that. Regarding with smacking, this person that's come, you know, forward, I'm dead glad that I has. There's a difference between beating or having a belt or having a what you call it or whatever. I can guarantee you now, I've got 3 children come out of an absolutely horrendous childhood, and it weren't smacking, it was mental abuse and some other abuse. I won't go into that. And it was mental abuse. I would have liked a smack in them days anyway than having that kind of a mental, I'm going to put you in a foster thing. I'm got you and your sister. We're going to split you up. We're going to do. Honestly, it was absolutely, and nobody did anything, and they still don't speak about it today.
Really?
All they do is speak about a smack, you know, like and that. I have smacked. I can tell. I've got my eldest. I've smacked her twice. My middle one, she was absolutely, and she's a teacher, you know, like I ought a teacher now. She got the most smacks. She got, I think it was 4 or 5. And my little prince, my son, he's only ever had one smack. And every single one of them had been on his hand. And what it comes down to is danger. That's all it came down to, is danger. Because they wouldn't listen. They wouldn't, what you call it, they wouldn't. It's never done them. With the grace of God, it's never done them. And I totally agree with you with this thing. I have said all the with them, all my 3 children, and funny enough, only 2 years ago with something that went on, I am not your friend, I'm your mother. You have one mother, you have loads of friends, and there's loads of things that you're not going to like, right? And I have to tell you. I have to be straight with you. I have to tell you, because I'm your mother. I love you that much. I ain't going to con you. I ain't going to lie to you. I ain't going to do that. And I think, I don't know where I got it from. I haven't got a clue. Nobody taught it me. Nobody.
Maybe like me, that was the kind of parenting I wanted.
I wanted it.
I have no relationship at all with my mother. None.
I have. I mean, it's another show. My parents, it's a nothing. You know, like, even though my mother died last year, I've got an half sister who's got learning difficulties. She's in the 50s, and it's horrendous what she did with her. But I gave her, you know, like, and I did whatever I did, because I'm me. Gave her the best berry, did everything for, you know, that was there when she died and whatever. Did I want to be there? No. And I don't know why, and that is me. And I'm doing what I'm doing is because that is me. And maybe it's because of the way that I was brought up. Maybe because of all that. I don't know. But I know that my kids ain't going to go through that. I've got 2 grandchildren. They make me laugh with the mother. The same, you know, like I've got 3 children. The eldest one has got I've got 2 children with her, and they make me laugh because she pushes my beautiful granddaughter, and I go, "Hey, that's enough."
Yeah.
And she stops, just stops. She don't like with it, and I think she kind of likes it with the mum, and the mum kind of likes it. But it's not rude, it's not in any way or whatever. And so all that kind of stuff that happened to me in the past, I'm able to do it. Plus, I've been with my husband, like I think I told, since I was 15. Plus, I lived in my side, you know, like through my childhood. So, you know, like all that kind of, I don't know why, but it's benefit my children with the grace of God, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, like with it. And like yourself, you know, like, and that's probably why I keep getting onto your programme, because I think you're amazing how you look upon loads and loads of things and whatever. But I definitely do think banning smacking is ridiculous. There's a massive difference between smacking and abuse. And abuse can be a belt, or it could be mentally, verbally, without anything. You know, like, it's shocking.
I totally agree. And you know what? Those abusers, both emotional and physical, will continue with or without a ban, because they're already going too far. They're already abusing their children, and nothing will stop them. I mean, I hope that something can stop them, but certainly a smacking ban is not the beginning of that stopping.
It certainly isn't, swear. No chance on this earth. And can you imagine a child who's out of order or spoiled or whatever, and they get on the phone when my mother has slapped my hand, because that's all I've ever done. I think I've once with a leg. My middle daughter said,
a slap on the I slapped my son
said,
twice.
I got you before you went to get in a bonfire, you know, like, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like, with it, we laugh about it or whatever. Can you imagine that today, if we had a banning thing, there'd be tons of children that'd be ringing up, you know, like my mother. And they
they all know.
even got
My son,
got the clue.
Yeah, I think
what
my
the
son,
consequences would be with that.
even at the age of 11 or 12, was saying, "I'll phone Childline if you don't let me play my PlayStation."
Yeah.
Or whatever. And I go, "Go on, just do it. I'll pack your bag. You can, you can do it. I don't care." My son once on the thigh and definitely once or twice on the hand when he was reaching to do something really stupid. But Carol, thank you. Great to talk to you. I've got to take a quick break, but I will be back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, so it's about 10 more minutes. Listen, I just want to address this text here. Don't mention my name. No, I definitely do not agree. This is horrendous text, by the way. So if you get upset about it, I'm really, really sorry, but there's the warning for you. This text then goes on to say, "I've heard my granddaughters being thrashed in their room, coming to me and saying, 'Grandma, I just want it to stop.' The stepfather stripping them naked at the age of 9 and 10 years age, when running an ice-cold shower and shoving them in it and telling them they would get out when he was ready, all because one child gave out a little giggle and something funny to what the other one said. To hear this and for authorities to do nothing, sorry, it's not good enough. Being pulled across a room by their hair up to their bedroom, knowing what would happen to them. I heard it all. I'm not lying, and no truer word spoken than that of a child." That is abuse. That is some of the worst abuse. That is disgusting abuse. That is violent abuse. And God knows what else is happening in that house. You have to get those children out of there. You have to call the police. You cannot just say that this is an issue of being smacked. This is not. This is dangerous abuse, and you must call the police and you must tell them what has happened. Forget social services, forget all of that. Tomorrow, call the police and tell them what is going on in that house. After that, the other authorities will get involved. But if you do not do that and you just feel there's nothing that can be done about this, something terrible else is going to happen if it isn't already happening. A grown man stripping little girls naked is not normal, it's not natural, and it's not right. Please call the police and tell them what's going on in that house. Please. Gary has said, I was only ever slapped on the bottom once as a child and it did me no harm. I know right from wrong and I've never been in trouble with the law. That look from my mum was enough for me to behave. I think a lack of discipline nowadays from parents and teachers, etc., is the reason for unruly kids and teenagers. That's from Gary in Glasgow, I agree. And I've certainly got that look. I just shoot it to my team every now and then. It scares them. Terrified of me now, terrified. Right, let's go to the phones. Jason is on the line now. Hello, Jason.
Hi, Petrie, how you doing?
I'm good. You still driving your lorry?
Well, bad. Yeah, I'm still driving. Yeah, I'm still on my way up to Glasgow at the moment.
Oh,
I've been out since the last boat, you know, don't worry.
You have stopped, have you, at some point?
Yeah.
Good. You're just driving around the M25 forever.
Oh, I know. I think this subject we're on about now, there's something that somebody has, people haven't mentioned about. I think a big issue has been the breakdown of marriages. No father figure in the family. I broke up with my wife when my kids were young, but I still had contact with my children on a regular basis. And a lot of fathers walk away and don't bother going back. And I've always said kids, a lot of daughters and your sons need guidance in life. You know what I mean? By a father figure, and a lot of children haven't got that, and they look up to the wrong people who they meet. With the children that are unruly, and then that causes problems to tell the mother who's living on her own with the children. It's a big issue with the responsibility of marriage that adults are not taking on fully. You know what I mean?
Listen, I know that is an argument, and it's an argument that's often levelled. But my son was brought up just by me for reasons I won't go into, and he is a brilliant human being, and there were friends of mine that he did look up to, and I suppose that's what you're talking about. But he he didn't need that to turn out to be the great bloke that he is. And also I always think, Jason, about the end of the Second World War, when there were more single mothers, obviously, because a lot of our men died, fighting that war. And there didn't seem to be a discipline problem then.
It was different back then, though, wasn't it, really? There was a lot more discipline in school.
Oh, yeah, well. No, you're right, actually. That's a good argument, yeah.
And there was, you had conscription by the army when you got to a certain age as well.
And you had the police, I suppose the police clipping you around the ear.
I mean, I've been clipped around the ear when I was 15 at a football match for swearing, and the police officer clipped me around the ear and said, next time you hear that, you'll have boots in your backside. And it taught me a lesson, you know what I mean? It's I've got to be careful and stuff, shouldn't be saying that, you know what I mean?
But do you think...
You don't get that now.
Do you think that children... Yeah, but do you think children need a father figure for the fear factor?
I wouldn't say fear. I mean, that's... it's a tough word to say, any fear. I don't think anybody should... We've all got fears. I'm scared of heights and stuff, and all that sort of stuff. But, to have fear of a parent is not really... It's going to make that... It could make that person more timid as they get older, if you know what I mean. I mean, you've got to be assertive in life and, and be able to... Constructive assertiveness where you can tackle problems head on. And I think giving children fear, it could...
But there must be a certain amount of fear. There has to be a certain amount of fear of consequences. Wait till your father gets home. Maybe you've never smacked your children, but the fear of it might make them respect your word more than your partner's word. He's gone. He left me. Jason there driving his van. I always imagine him endlessly going around the M25. Yeah, I just wonder about that, because it is the whole thing about I don't think fear is a bad thing. I mean, fear is in our DNA. Fear is what's kept us alive. Fear of certain plants, certain situations, standing too close to the edge of a cliff. That's a fear. That's a phobia of spiders. That's a real phobia and fear, and that's what keeps us alive. Fear is necessary. It's important. Otherwise, we're just all sort of flopping around, not thinking of the consequences of our actions. I don't know. I think that fear is a good thing. Not too much, but a little bit. How can you do it otherwise? Anyway, a couple more messages. Yeah, I've got time. Born in 1964, got the cane twice at school and smacked behind from my dad twice. Oh, smacked behind from my dad twice and mum once. Never did me any harm and taught me to respect my elders. But did it teach you to fear them? That's the thing. And then Nikki says, being smacked as a child can affect you and has affected me, mainly in the fact that when I visit my parents now, who are in their 70s, I feel uncomfortable as they act so differently with false niceties, as if the past has left their memory. I still get flashbacks